happened to you, Doctor? When did killing someone become an option?
Jex has to answer for his crimes.
And what then? Are you going to hunt down everyone who's made a gun or a bullet or a bomb?
But they keep coming back, don't you see? Every time I negotiate, I try to understand. Well, not today, no. Today, I honour the victims first. His, the Masters, the Daleks, all the people who died because of my mercy.
Yeah, as you can see, this fan film kind of hit me hard. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe has always had the potential to go dark. In fact, I argue that it should not have been afraid to go dark in the first place. Even in its live-action movie and the revamp in 2002, whilst they pushed the boundaries of their presentation, they were always overshadowed by the fluffy and campy good nature of their original 1980s animated forebear, and never really dared to push anything south beyond an innocent fling of fantasy. Whereas its peers got darker, more complex and cerebral and character-driven in the 21st century. He-Man, however, refused to give up that moral mantle that it had taken up in the 80s, and as a result, whilst the weaker of the more popular franchises of the 1980s still has its following, still pales in the shadow of Transformers, Thundercats and even My Little Pony, and thus guarantee the production hell status for any potential live-action reboot. Truth is, though, I believe that no one actually knows what to do with it. I mean, look at it. It represents everything that was the 80s. A confused mishmash of morality, having the right intentions, but very confounded as to what it actually is or needed to be. It was manly? It was gay? Was it a hero franchise for boys or girls, or maybe both? Or does it really matter that a boy might want to play with She-Ra pitted against the rampaging empire of Hordak? Michael Bay may have his hands on this franchise for potential ruination, but if you think he messed up the Transformers, at least he knew what he was messing up. You gotta give him that. Masters of the Universe, however? Well, whatever he does with it, he probably realizes that the franchise he's dealing with may be the physical ideal of what teenage boys consider to be a real man, but in reality is little more than just a delicate flower. Given that, I would certainly argue that He-Man and the Masters of the Universe is pretty non-binary. And coming from an age where non-binary was even considered a thing, that's actually saying something. Of course, Hollywood these days doesn't know what to do with non-binary characters, ideas, or even people. Sex sells, not gender. And until Hollywood can break out of this limited thinking, I fear Masters of the Universe will either stay on the shelf for a long time or be broken up into something that is anything but what the Masters of the Universe was, intentional or not. Whatever happens, you can more or less guarantee Bay will sexualize the franchise, considering that is his demographic. After all, he did paint Optimus Prime in a light that was no longer recognizable as the once noble character he once was. He did militarize the Turtles, and what he did to Freddy Krueger... Oh, okay, let's move on before this turns into one of my Bay rants. You don't want that again. Point is, it's fair to say that no one went into He-Man and Masters of the Universe with quite the same idea as what it was meant to be. My Christian parents, for example, tried to ban me from watching it, as much as they tried to ban me from playing Dungeons and Dragons, believing it would summon some demonic creatures into the living room. Some of my friends thought it was, well, gay. Others thought that He-Man was the coolest man in the universe. So cool, in fact, he put Mr. T on notice. And Mr. T moralized just as much in his cartoon show, and he obviously took notice. I say that Masters of the Universe was clearly the weakest of the strong franchise out there, but it certainly wasn't the weakest franchise of the 80s. It had a huge following and still does today, with fans who take it just as seriously as many of us would take Transformers Generation 1 or the original G.I. Joe. I wouldn't dare to underrate this franchise in any way on my show, or even dare to do so to a fan's face. I give this fandom all the respect it deserves. It certainly earned it. I'm not a huge fan, I'll admit. I'm certainly not the best person to come to when it comes to the Law of Eternia, and if I wasn't really paying much more attention, I'd say the lore was lacking. It's not. Eternia is actually rich with its own history and background. Skeletor didn't just pop out of the ground, and the now hard-to-find 2008 live-action fan trilogy, including Wizard of Stone Mountain, tells a good pre-He-Man origin story to Eternia. And the 21st century reboot adds more gravitas to the origin of Skeletor and why Adam was chosen to be the champion of the universe. I'm sure there's more to the background as to why Eternia is important to the entire universe as well, but I will admit I haven't paid too much attention to it. So until I do some deeper research into it, if I can find the time, a lot of my commentary on what Eternia is, or could be, would be more theory and supposition, and to be quite frank, easily debunked by any true and dedicated fan of the show. Which brings me to the fan films. There are not a lot of fan films on Masters of the Universe available on the internet. Sadly, the best ones, concentrating more on the history of Eternia than the actual He-Man adventures, are very hard to find these days. Whilst writing this, I don't even know if I found the trailer for this video. If you see it here, then man, that was a lucky find. I do recall Skeletor having tremendous makeup, which is pretty awesome for a fan production. That said, there is one more recent production, The Fall of Grayskull, that pays some serious tribute to the source material. Perhaps a little too seriously. And perhaps a little too loosely as well. Is it bad? No, it's not a great movie either. But then again, I don't expect it to be. It is, after all, a fan film. And this one was literally made on a budget of next to nothing, so I really can't fault it for its aesthetic. Interpretation and ultimate outcome, perhaps, yes, but I'll get to that. I know I wanted dark. But wow, this film is dark. Putting the obvious violence aside, those costumes for Evelyn and Teela, whilst... Look for the, shallow eyes. Sorry, let me get back to the review. I'm a little distracted there. It's certainly not a children's fan movie, despite the obvious homage to the original cartoon show, and again, that's not a bad thing. I actually like it this dark. I actually like it this violent. I actually like it this, revealing. I like it, actually. It harks back to the 80s B-movie fantasy films that I used to watch. I didn't mind pushing the violence, the visual, or the sexual angle, which is also a bit of a downside. The costumes in this are a little too reminiscent of a good porn parody, and I mean a good porn parody. You know, like the scenes you get without sex. That's not to say that the film itself is bad, it's not. There are some porn parodies that can be just as good as the original product. But don't look at this film like that. Oh God, please, please don't look at this film like that. Another fault is pacing. Yes, I know there is a comic as to what happened before, but bear in mind that doesn't help the newcomer any, especially one who may not be aware of the comic. You're thrown into the middle of the crisis, like the original movie. So with no actual build-up to the confrontation as to why Grayskull has fallen, or even why Shadow Weaver would jump ship and join the good guys, you kind of don't know what's going on. I mean, I kind of get that she was always ambiguously evil and not on one side or the other and only in for her own machinations, but other than the one line of being double-crossed by Skeletor, I would love to know more about how or why outside of the comic book. And I admit I haven't even read that yet before making this review, so I guess I should get on that. But the point is I'm approaching this as a film, not a comic book adaptation. And a lot of people will be doing the same too. Story-wise, as I said, it's slow going. Really slow going, which is a shame, as I understand that this could have gone for a shorter runtime if they had worked on the pacing a little more. And whilst the rule show don't tell is a good play sometimes, that doesn't mean that the audience doesn't need to be in on the plan. Otherwise they're in for a few WTF moments. For example, like Shadow Weaver is in on the attack on Grayskull, but she's not even told what the plan is. It's not very reliable in the long run. So when this guy shows up, I have to wonder who he is. I have a few ideas. Spirit of Grayskull, perhaps? The original He-Man, given the hair? What? I'm lost. Who is he? What's his deal? Why even bring up this Deus Machina? I thought Teela was supposed to be the hero of this one. Lord knows she should be, instead of thrown away like a spare piece after all the work she's put into saving He-Man and Grayskull and all that. And I will get to the final confrontation eventually. That said, visually it's great. It's not stunning, but it is great, at least in green screen sense. I love this kind of filming where the reality is just out of touch with fantasy. Maybe it's the old schooler in me, but there's something about the background not being entirely real that actually appeals to me. It's a beautiful contrast of art and the ability to blend reality with what this film is supposed to be. Fantasy. So as much as many might knock it, I can't. I won't. I simply love this style of filmmaking. Thumbs up. Especially like the floor walking effect. You don't see much of that really ever. In many films, much less a fan film. I'll give you even more marks for pulling that off. The effects are good too. For a no-budget fan film. Yes, if they had the time and the tools, they could do better, but sometimes you get what you can pay for. And if you don't have the immediate talent to hand, and with a few glitches in the shots, it works okay and is pretty watchable. The acting for a fan film, and like many fan films, is a little wooden. I'm okay with that too. Trust me, I've seen and heard much worse, considering how cartoonized they are. I can't let that pass. Well, just. Like I said, they come across as a little cartoonish, which is a little off-putting, considering the level of violence, and let's not pretend the sexing up of the cast and the story here. Make no mistake, this is a film for adults. This is supposed to be Endgame, the final conflict, and your Skeletor is awesome.
Ow!
He's not Frank Langella awesome, don't get me wrong, but he's still awesome. If a little underpowered, but then, to be fair, so is He-Man. The final battle really isn't something to write home about, which is a shame. I understand it had limitations with space and all, and if they took out a lot of the slow fluff, they could have made the build-up and tension more impactful with a greater final battle between He-Man and Skeletor, and still be able to round up the 30 minutes they wanted for the film. And speaking of Skeletor, bringing in Alan Oppenheimer to narrate your film, the original voice of Skeletor in the 1980s show, is a tremendous nod to the fans. Well played. Which actually brings up what has been a pretty much debated conclusion to the film. He-Man literally kills Skeletor. No, seriously. Every promise he has made, he breaks. Quite conveniently when you think about it, after his secret identity has been revealed and...
No. By destroying you, I'll be saving countless lives. Innocent lives. Who would never long for the destruction of others.
If you take my life, you will be no better than me.
It is not me who ends your life. You are justly destroyed by your own treachery. by the power of Grayskull!
I'm not really happy about it. He-Man doesn't kill for a reason, not just because of some moral ethic or code or weakness, but because of his faith that even Skeletor can either be redeemed or reined in by the goodness of the universe or the people around him. This is quite a turnabout face for He-Man, and Grayskull is apparently okay with it. Why? I don't get it. Oh sure, Skeletor is responsible for the death of millions, but murder doesn't resolve the issue. It makes for martyrs, and Skeletor has had enough followers, many of whom are probably very much still alive and would love to live up to his name. And if you think Hordak, Skeletor's mentor, doesn't know this already, at least with Skeletor you had him known quantity. You could have at least put him on trial, or even put him to death after that trial if you wanted to. Let the world see justice done, and evil is vanquished through the nobility of good, not the quick and easy route of vengeance. Jeez, it's not like his strongest followers are alive anymore. Melting and having your head chopped off tends to put a damper on them leaping to your rescue, you know. I'm not saying he should live. God, no. If this Skeletor is evil, and that is to be accepted, then show it. Show that he deserves this. Like I said before, this film made the characters way too cartoony, a little too close to the original cartoon show, and then makes it violent and adult. For all his evilness in the show, his actions were more mischief than an actual reign of terror. We need more than the death of the sorcerers, which was not at Skeletor's hands, I might add, to make the impact more powerful. And to show that he even deserved this change of mercy from He-Man. Up until then, it was a great film. Very enjoyable. Sadly thrown to the backseat with the same thud the death of Batman gave us. He-Man was no longer a hero to me at that point. He was justice at gunpoint. Or in this case, electric sword point. And for the first time, He-Man actually scared the bejesus out of me. Yeah, wow, I got to admit, even as I'm writing this, I'm still at a loss for words. So powerful is this very act at the end, it takes away the humorous nod of flirting between He-Man and Teela at the end. And that was also in the cartoon. At what point does an act of murder leave me somewhat full and justified? It didn't. It left me empty. It left me scared. As I just witnessed a hero of mine jump into the abyss. Did I just witness the birth of a new Skeletor? Could He-Man and the corruption of Grayskull be the final nail that dooms Eternia, and in turn the universe? And if so... No, I may not like it, but there may be a way back, and that's why it's good to sit through the end credits like you would a Marvel film. If they do a sequel, and I hope they do, I hope they focus on the corruption of He-Man and Grayskull and use the teaser they just introduced as a foundation for the form of redemption. Now that I would really like to see. The fall of Grayskull seems to be very nuanced, and possibly unintentionally. I hope it's actually smarter than that, because Grayskull really did fall in this film, and He-Man's fall from grace, whether intentional or not, was a very powerful thing for me to watch. It was uneasy. It left me empty and without hope. It left me very, very frightened as to what He-Man could actually become. Much truth was in Skeletor's words when he said killing him would make He-Man just like him. And I'd like to hope that that was the writer's intent. We may never know. But I would like to know, though. No, seriously, I would really love to know. Daniel, please make a sequel if you can. Or at least let someone else do it. I would like to see a dark rendition of He-Man, the corruption of Grayskull, and how, if at all, it can achieve redemption. Without giving away the mid-credits scene, which is a fantastic payoff, I might add, this film is actually crying out for a sequel. It's not the best film I have ever seen, no. But with its flaws, of which there are many many, many more potentials. What was weak in this film can actually be turned into a strength. The ending was powerful, to say the least. An unexpected twist that really deserves a great payoff. He-Man and Adam having to live with what they did and coming to terms that if murder was all they had left to vanquish evil, where does that cycle end? And where does real justice, real peace, and real freedom begin? Did he just trade in one tyranny for another? His own, perhaps? And that's what I took from this. And wow, yes, it may have been poor writing and character development on the writer's part. But again, I'm hoping that's not the case. But even if it was or wasn't, it was a powerful scene nonetheless. Yes, the pacing is slow. It makes the movie feel a little longer than it actually is. The effects are at best okay. The green screening is actually very well done, if not obvious. But I challenge you not to be silenced by the final resolution and not to give out a cheer at the end credit scene. The Fall of Grayskull is a great fan film, no doubt, and it deserves viewing and support. I may not have approved of the ending, but it's there, and it still was effective. It actually made me think, and even if that was unintentional, that's still a great thing for me. It means I can write this review and give it the praise it deserves. I like to have something to leave an impact or a scar on my soul, and in that, The Fall of Grayskull delivers its power in spades. Until next time, ciao.